This is Support is Sexy, episode 263, with career coach and self-empowerment speaker, Juliet Hall. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And you know, it just would not be the same without our guests. I am truly grateful for all the ladies who show up, who say yes, you as listeners, and for the women who come on the show. Lots of them are sharing their stories in the way that they tell me they never have before, sitting for an hour, sharing their story in addition to their strategies. You know, I always say the podcast is strategy wrapped in storytelling. And I tell the women before we start recording, share as much of your story as you feel comfortable. And many of them share a lot more than they plan to, or again, that they ever have before. Well, today, Juliet Hall is one of those fantastic women who said yes, who showed up, and who was truly transparent, honest, and open about things she experienced in her entrepreneurial journey before she got to that point, afterward, and even some things she experienced growing up and how it shaped who she is as a woman today. All of us have a story. I am very dedicated to creating spaces for women to share their stories. So when I hear a powerful woman like Juliet share her journey with us in the way that she did, it truly makes me, again, grateful. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to all of the women who say yes to being on the podcast. Again, it would not be the same without you. So Juliet is a self-empowerment speaker and a career coach. And what she shares with us today, in addition to parts of her journey, are some great tips about making the transition from a full-time career to entrepreneurship, if that's what you'd like to do, or other ways of finding satisfaction while working your full-time career, but really finding your purpose. So what you'll learn from Juliet is the power of visualization and intention, her 3 Ps, principle, people, and products. Also, 3 smart ways to own your opportunities, the blind spots that cause us to miss out on opportunities, which we must be aware of, how to recognize when you outgrow a situation, why you must align your work with your gifts, her tips on how to plan for your transition, her advice also for how to create speaking opportunities if you're someone who thinks you'd like to be a public speaker. She has some great starter tips for that. Also, why you should fail at fitting in. I love that. And be independent of people's expectations of you. In addition to people's expectations, she says be aware of well-intentioned advice from non-entrepreneurs. Everybody always wants to tell you how to do it when they've never done it, right? And another thing she shares with us is how to channel pain into promise and so much more. So I know you're going to get a lot out of this episode with Juliet. Be sure to let us both know what you think after you listen to the episode. So without further ado, Juliet Hall. So Juliet, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to talk to you.
Thanks, Elayne. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Excellent. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Probably when I decided that I didn't like other people telling me what to do. Like many people, I don't like to be controlled. And probably as I was in my corporate career, it got to a point where I was just at a point where I first of all, saw myself doing other things. And then secondly, I just have the type of temperament where I like to be in control. I like to lead. I like to be able to create things. And I think that's really the genesis of my decision to become an entrepreneur.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, Southern girl.
Yes, I am. Southern girl. So I'm born and raised there. And I grew up with parents or into a family that emphasized education. Some of one of my great grandfather is an entrepreneur, or was an entrepreneur. He started the first African American construction company in South Carolina. And so I have a little bit of that in my blood, but also I just grew up in a household that just really emphasized education and pursuing that. So both of my parents and all of my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, they all went to college, and so I was steeped in that tradition.
What would you say you were like as a young girl growing up in South Carolina?
Well, my mom would probably say I was stubborn and hard-headed.
No.
But I was actually pretty studious. I actually grew up in a very strict household. In addition to education, we were just a church-going family. And I grew up in a lot of rules. And I would say that in the course of my growing up, I really wasn't allowed to do a lot of things that some of my friends got to do, such as date and talk on the phone, and I couldn't even really watch TV a whole lot. So I like to tell people I grew up in a boot camp. It was a very structured environment, very much where I grew up under a system of control, which is probably why I don't like being controlled so much.
Now, were your parents ministers?
No, my biological parents actually divorced, and my mom remarried, and her second husband was very much a strict and very controlling, even to the point of just being, just overly controlling, and so it was very harsh kind of growing up under his regime, quote unquote. But there was a benefit to that. And the benefit was I really didn't have a lot of distractions. So all I could do was focus on my academics. And as a result, I was a very good student. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. And I also really evolved in my extracurricular activities. And I learned at an early age, Elayne, that you really have to make the best out of your situation. And if you don't like what you're in, then it forces you to be creative and to find an outlet. And I found that outlet through reading and through my academics and building up a scholastic resume that would open the door for me to go to college on scholarship and find my freedom there.
Were you an only child growing up?
I was not. I have an older sister who's 3 years older than me, and so she's I grew up as the baby, if you will.
Yeah. So were you both very focused on academics?
We were. My sister graduated number 2 in her class. I graduated number 1. Not that, I wasn't trying to be competitive.
Yes, you were, Juliet. I'm just saying, the facts are the facts.
The facts. Well, my sister points that out more than I do. So she likes to point out the things that I've done that I've exceeded her in.
You're like Serena. You and Serena, sister is Venus, but you're both champions.
We are both champions. My sister is a doctor. We both graduated from Spelman College. She went on and pursued her medical career. She's a family doctor in Nashville. She has 2 practices, so she's doing quite well.
That's great. I love it. Now, what would you say then that after Spelman, what did you think you were going to go into? What did you study and what did you see as your future at that time?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, when I was actually growing up in my strict household, pretty much the only TV I could watch was the news. And I grew up watching Tom Brokaw on NBC Nightly News. I thought I was going to go into broadcast journalism because I said, I like to write. I like stories. And I'm a great speaker. I spoke a lot in high school. And I said, this might be the career for me. So I went to college, to Spelman, and I majored in English and minored in psychology, thinking that I was going to go down that path, but I didn't. I actually had a lot of fun in college. I don't think I handled my freedom very well because I got distracted, the things that I couldn't do. As a child, I certainly got to get it all out while I was in college. And
You had a little bit of a rebellious period?
I did, Elayne. I did. I had a little bit of a rebellious period. I certainly acquired a lot of life experiences. So, I mean, there's really not, I don't have any regrets about it. There's really not a whole lot that I would say that I wish I could have done over. But that's what I went to school for. And the lesson that I learned was that I think at some point in my career, because I didn't take advantage of certain opportunities while I was in college, it derailed that dream, or actually it eliminated that dream altogether. So I found myself at the end of my collegiate career just trying to look for a job, because I knew I didn't want to go back to Columbia. And I didn't want to go to grad school right away. So I hadn't taken advantage of any internships while I was at news stations while I was in college. So I just didn't apply myself the way that I should have. And, there's...
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, what do you think it was for you during that time? Was it that you had put so much into your studies when you were younger that you just sort of really needed a break and some time to have some fun? Sounds like nothing, quote unquote, wrong with what you did. You just took a different approach to your studies at that time. But what do you think it was for you?
I think it was that, where I wanted that season of freedom. But I also, looking back, realized that in the course of enjoying that freedom, that I got comfortable and I got distracted. Mm-hmm. I think that happens to a lot of us as we get older. When we're settled in our careers, there's a point where we get comfortable and we get distracted, and we're not pursuing the goals or the dreams that we had in us. And I think that's what happened to me. I enjoyed the freedom so much that I lost sight of my goals. And that's just what happened. But life has a way of coming full circle, mm-hmm. because 20 years later, I'm in a space now where the things that I really enjoy doing, and the speaking and the writing, the things that I actually went to school for, I'm doing those things now. So I may not be on the news, but I'm just on a different stage.
Right. You're still sharing a message.
Yes.
That's right. So then after school, what was that first job that you went into, or career that you went into?
So I went into banking. I went with the only company that offered me an opportunity. There were several financial institutions that were interviewing on Spelman's campus. They were recruiting students from our college, and I interviewed with several financial institutions, and I went with the organization that offered me an opportunity, and that was Wachovia Bank. And I was selected into their management training program, and I was with them for 3.5 years. And then I decided that was not the fit for me, that I didn't really enjoy the culture so much, even though I learned a lot of things that were beneficial to me in my career, such as what type of leader I wanted to be or person I wanted to be and not be. And I learned that lesson because my first boss was someone that led by intimidation versus inspiration. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that there are things that you can learn from, the good and the bad people that you work for. So, but I realized that I just didn't feel alive. I felt suffocated. I felt drained. I wasn't utilizing a skill set that was natural to me. And so I guess after work, I would go home and I would just daydream about where I saw myself. I visualized myself in a space that gave me a lot of energy and hope. And I wasn't exactly sure at the time, because at this point in time, I'm in my early 20s, and I knew that I wasn't going to go into broadcast journalism, but I still saw myself on the stage. I still saw myself speaking. And so it was during that time when I was at Wachovia Bank where I was still discovering myself. I still had my job, but after work, that was when I really began to think for myself, okay, what is it that I really want to do with my life? And so that after 3.5 years, I came to a conclusion that I wanted to be very intentional about my life. That was probably the most important decision that I could make, was to be intentional. And I decided that my quality of life was more important to me than any money and any amount of title, any kind of title. And so once I came to that decision for myself, then I really began the process of praying and asking God, okay, what is it that that I should be doing, and where do I want to be? And I thought about the places that I thought that I might want to work for, given the things, the interests that I have. And in this process, in this conversation that I had with God, I came to this epiphany that if I'm going to work for another corporation, that I want it to be a corporation where the values are consistent with mine, where there's a focus on people, and where I really get excited about the product. So I actually call it the 3 Ps. I called it principles, people, and products. And when I analyzed, okay, what company matches my values, and where would there be a focus on people, and where would I really get excited about the products. When I'm having this going through this mental process, Elayne, I was actually eating at a ChickfilA restaurant at the time. And when I got to the products, I took a bite of the Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can get excited about this. And that's really when the light bulb turned on for me. And that's what started my path to pursue Chick-fil-A. And it took me 6 months and 14 interviews to get through that selection process. And the rest was history. I was there for 17 years.
Okay, that's incredible. First of all, the fact that in that moment, well, one of the things, and I've mentioned this on several episodes, that's from an interview I did with this woman, Patricia Moreno, very early on in the podcast, but she talked about when we don't know the answers, the importance of living the question. And they'll show up when you least expect it, at a Chick-fil-A, for example. So for you, though, when you took a bite of the sandwich, but did you think right away, I'm going to work in corporate for Chick-fil-A? You know what I mean? Like, did you see, what were your thoughts at that time in processing, just for people listening so that they can sort of be just conscious in those moments when inspiration comes to you in whatever kind of way?
So in that moment, again, I go back to my decision of being intentional. A lot of times, and this is what happened to me when I was in college, I just gave my resume out to any and every company that was hiring.
Right.
And the difference this go round was that applying a mindset of intentionality, I wanted to do my research on the front end, and I wanted to take a monogamous approach to applying for an opportunity. I wanted it to be the right fit. I just didn't want to be a warm body somewhere, or just apply to some place where I didn't feel like I was going to thrive. I mean, you want to be intentional about where you want to plant yourself, because if you keep uprooting yourself and going from one job to another, then you'll never really grow. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be very conscientious about where I was going to spend a third of my life every day. and I would say for those people who are listening, for me, I was very prayerful. I wanted to include God in the process, because I figure that God knows me better than anybody else, and he knows what's best for me. And I wanted to give him a voice to my plans. I mean, even though we have our own will and God honors that, I still wanted to include or invite God to be a part of this process so that I could truly begin a life for myself where I could self-actualize. And so, so the thoughts for me at that time was, when I was at that Chick-fil-A restaurant and I was going through my 3 Ps, I mean, obviously I took a bite of the sandwich, but then I began to notice the people in the organization and how, with every experience I had at a restaurant, the experience was very consistent as a customer. And I didn't even know that the company was based on biblical principles at the time. I mean, I just knew they were closed on Sundays. So while I was at the restaurant and while I had that epiphany, I still did more research to make sure that everything that I had observed as a customer and the things that I had read and learned about the organization, I made sure I did that research on the front end so that when I did call them, I was very confident about why I wanted to pursue an opportunity with them.
Now, you said that the process took 6 months. Is that because at the time they didn't have anything available? Like, did you search for a position and then decide I'm going to apply for this? Or did you just know I want to work for this company and I'm going to let them know this?
Yeah, no, the company is privately owned, and it just takes a long time to be a part of the organization. I knew what position that I was going to apply for because when I got ready to pursue the organization and ask for an application, I called them. This was during the late 90s. So at this time, the online system, it wasn't all that sophisticated.
Which is a gift and a curse.
It's a gift and a curse.
Millions of people applying for something. This was back when you had to have the personal touch.
That's exactly right. So during that time, I picked up the phone and I called and spoke to, I don't even know if they had human resources. I think it was still called personnel back then. Right. So I'm dating myself. So anyway.
I remember too.
Yeah, so I called them and I spoke to someone in their human resources or their talent department and told them about my background. And then that person referred me or directed me to the position that he thought I would be the best fit for, and that was for a business consultant. So that's how that happened.
And then, so you end up staying there for 17 years, you mentioned.
I did. So, and I had a wonderful experience overall at Chick-fil-A. I learned so much. I grew as a professional woman, but 13 of those years were spent in operations. So I worked with the operators, the franchisees in the restaurants, and I was their business consultant. So my role was to, first of all, protect the brand of Chick-fil-A. Secondly, to help the operators maximize their business opportunity, help them achieve their goals, and help them be successful. And then the third thing was just to help ensure long-term success of the organization overall. And so it was a very influential role, very important because operations is where it's really the engine of any business. And so I was in that space. I was the third Black female business consultant in a role that was occupied by majority white men. Mm-hmm. And so I, certainly had some challenges there. I was diverse in every way. I was the youngest in my on my particular team. I was the we had different teams of business consultants, and then on my individual team, I was the youngest, the only woman, the only Black. And I didn't grow up through Chick-fil-A, and I wasn't married because Chick-fil-A, as many people know, it's a family organization. So I was just diverse in pretty much every perspective, and I certainly had a lot of work to do to earn credibility and to grow. But it was a great experience because I got to learn wise lessons in leadership, such as putting people first and focusing on getting better, and allowing your customers demand that you get bigger. And I just learned about the importance of treating people with dignity and respect, and following the golden rule, and the importance of following up. So I am grateful to have been steeped in a culture where there was such a high standard of excellence, and that was a bar that that's set in that organization, and being in that culture for 17 years helped me to develop a mindset of excellence that I'm carrying into my business now.
So what was the moment like when you decided that you wanted to launch your own business and make that move, especially from a company that you had been with for a fair amount of time, or a great amount of time, actually? And was it difficult to make that decision and make that move?
Yeah, so it was difficult. But I have to be really honest and say that even when I first started working for ChickfilA, in my mind, I knew that I wasn't going to retire there. I actually thought that I wasn't going to stay there longer than 10 years because, again, I go back to those daydreams, those pictures of myself where I saw myself doing something different. I mean, I didn't go to school to sell chicken. I mean, I didn't. That wasn't my aspiration. And I'm not belittling that, because, people who work for Chick-fil-A would tell you that they're in the people business, not in the, they just happen to serve chicken, and it's true. But I still did not see myself, working in an office. I've always seen I think I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. It just didn't unlock itself until after I had been with this corporation for as long as I had been with them. And probably the turning point for me, or it just got to a place where the organization was no longer a fit for me. You have to recognize when you outgrow a situation. And when you're working for someone, I think it's so imperative that people align themselves in an area of their gifting. People perform better and they're more engaged when when their work is aligned with their strengths. And I felt like I wasn't really being utilized at a level that really kept me engaged in the organization. And don't get me wrong, I had tremendous opportunities. I traveled internationally. I got to speak on stages, which is really where I began to refine my gifts of speaking. That's when I really decided that this is what I want to do. This is, what I love to do. And I would never be at this place where I am had I not had the experience of a total of 20 years in corporate America, where I decided, where I learned, okay, this is what I don't want, and this is what I do want. And we need the good and the bad. We need those mountaintops and those valley experiences to help us figure out who we are and what we like and what we don't like, and to set our gifts free. And I was able to get a taste of the things that I really enjoyed doing while I was at Chick-fil-A. When it got to a point where, I was being paid for one thing, but I wasn't really able to use my gifts at a level that I wanted to, that's when it was time to go for me. And so that's what's difficult about it, is because at the end of the day, I don't know that I had a choice, Elayne. At the end of the day, I have to be who I am. And I have to be obedient to the person that God created me to be. And when I realized that I couldn't be 100% of Juliet, then it was time for me to leave. And the right doors were opened up for that. And the provision was there for me to make a transition into this space where I am now.
Excellent. So what was your first step then after you transitioned out of corporate America into what you do now with speaking all around the world and empowering women and leaders overall?
Yeah, so I will tell you in full transparency that I probably made a mental transition before I made the physical transition.
Right, which we often do.
As we often do. And so I would say 2 years before I actually left corporate America was when I started thinking about my next steps. And because you have to prepare. I'm big on preparation. You have to prepare for your freedom. You have to prepare for success. And this is what my preparation looked like. It started with looking at my finances and making sure that I could, transition comfortably to working for myself. A lot of people save for a house. A lot of people save for education. I wanted to save for a business. I wanted to save resources that would allow me to put together a team of people to help me in my new venture. And so that's what happened. I started thinking about, how much money I needed to save and, anything that I needed, debts that I needed to pay off. I wanted to be in the right position, Elayne. So that was financially. So that was step number one. Step number two was what people do I need to bring along with me? Because, you need people to help accelerate your vision. And, and I know what I'm gifted at, but my gifts alone will take me so far. I need to have a team of individuals who are also specialized in areas where I'm not, to help me, to lift me. And so that's what I did. I brought people who have similar values to mine, number one, because I need people who are also prayerful. I need people who believe in treating people right. I need people who can represent me, or be an extension of me. And so I just, my CPA, my legal counsel, at the time I had a publicist, a marketing consultant. I brought together a group of people that could help me. So that was done prior to my transition. And I was very careful to make sure that I gave my corporate job 100% of my time while I was working there. But you have to, I tell people this, there's a difference between your livelihood and your calling. So work your job, but then when your 9 to 5 is over, then your real work begins. That's when you can, work on, for me, it was developing my content. It was, meeting with, my individuals on my team and so forth. And, I took baby steps while I was still working for ChickfilA. And then after I left the corporation, that's when I could really turn the lights on full time to Juliet Hall, Inc. and own your opportunities. So
I love it. So what would you say then your business looks like now? Is it focused? What year was this when you first started the business?
So I left ChickfilA in September of 2016. So it hasn't even been a full year yet.
Okay. So what would you say then the business, or what was your vision at that time, or is it now, for Juliet Hall, Inc.?
So I knew that I wanted to develop my brand or build my brand as a public figure, as a speaker and as a writer. And that, because that's where my gifting is. I am gifted with words, and my desire, my passion is to inspire and mobilize individuals to be empowered, to be the person that God created them to be. So my whole platform of Own Your Opportunities is an empowerment message that's biblically based to help people be the person that God created them to be. And that's in essence what my platform is about. And the way that I execute that is through speaking and also through writing. So right now I'm working on a book, which has, so that's that's what I'm working on right now. I have a literary agent. I'm in the process now of getting ready to pitch to publishers, or she'll begin that process. But that's where I am right now. And then, of course, I do a lot of speaking as well. And that's right now. Those are the two areas that I am growing my brand. And with the speaking, it's keynote speaking. I'm also doing training as well, and those are the primary areas in which I'm monetizing my brand.
For those listening who might be thinking about or wanting to become a speaker in some way, what would you say your advice is for how to sort of get on those stages or to create opportunities in those, to own your opportunity in those spaces? What was it for you, one of the early steps?
So that's a great question, because, and it goes back to, being a part of corporate America. So I was able to open doors in those spaces through service. A lot of times I tell people your success is through your service. And for me, that's part of that service is serving on boards. It's being a part of different ministries at church. I pursued certain activities that I believe opened the door for me to speak. And once people hear you speak, once people see you in that light or in your area of gifting, when you're on and people see you, it creates word of mouth opportunities for you to have more of that. And that's what happened for me. I was while I was serving, whether it was at certain events, and I was asked to MC, or I was asked to speak to a group of kids, or even during some of the opportunities for me to speak globally on behalf of one of the philanthropic arms of ChickfilA. I was able to just be in certain places where I was able to utilize my gifts. The problem was I couldn't utilize it full time, but being in I was very intentional about pursuing interests inside and outside of the company where I could do the things that I love to do. And once you're in that space, it creates a certain level of momentum, where all you have to do is follow it. I tell people that your gifts make room for you. So when you're pursuing and operating in your giftedness, that will create space for you in this world. You don't have to lie, cheat, or steal to get to a place where you want to be. You just let your gifts take you there, and people will find you. There's an analogy that a lot of speakers use about mango trees or apple trees, and how a tree bears fruit, and you go to that tree to get to the fruit. The tree doesn't have to come to you to give it to you.
I've never heard that. That's good.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the same thing with us. We bear our fruit, which is our gift, and people will find us. People will pay for it, and all you have to do is be responsible and produce the fruit and operate in that giftedness.
Excellent. What would you say, speaking more about opportunities and your opportunities platform overall, what would you say you find it women entrepreneurs can do, maybe 3 steps to better own our opportunities?
So I would say, the first thing is know your value, and what I mean by that is your gifts are what make you rare, and what is rare is valuable. And so the first thing is, unlock your gifts. And your gifts, you don't have to go looking for them. They are already inside of you. Just like the mango tree was a seed first, right? But everything that the mango tree produces was already in that seed. So if you follow that line of thinking, then you realize that everything that you need to be successful and your purpose and your gifts, it's already inside of you. And you just have to unlock that. You have to tap into your spiritual relationship and ask your creator, who am I? And, help begin that process of self-discovery, I would say. And then that's the first step. The second thing I would say is once you realize what it is that you're gifted in, then you need to submit yourself to an authority where you can be covered and where you can have opportunities to refine those gifts, to invest in those gifts. For me, as much as, and this is so, I have to say this, as much as I don't like being controlled, I recognize that there is wisdom when you submit yourself to an authority, someone who has been where you want to go and who can teach you things. It can be a mentor, it can be a board of directors, it can be a coach. It's somebody who has been where you want to go, who can guide you and instruct you. And it's also someone who believes in you too, someone that you can trust. Because not every authority, I hate to say this, but, a lot of times people go to authorities as in their bosses, but not every boss is for you. And so, you have to be willing to, and yes, you should still submit to that authority on your job, but don't limit yourself to that is really what I'm saying. So know your gifts, invest in your gifts, and then share your gifts. And sharing those gifts is, the way that I explain that is to pursue those interests that you care about and deploy your gifts there. So, because it may not always be on your job. That's why I say that. There's a difference between your livelihood and your calling. And if you cannot utilize your gifts in the place where you work, then you have to find other opportunities to apply that value to do that.
Don't just give up on those gifts, right? Sometimes people say, I don't get to do it every day for my 9 to 5, so I just can't do it.
That's right. And so a lot of people, people come from different situations, and there are people who say, well, I need my job and I'm not going to give up my job to just do this. And so for me, I didn't just quit right away. My mental transition took place 2 years before I left corporate America. And I was still faithful to my 9 to 5, but my real work began after I left the office. And that's another lesson there. You have to want success bad enough and be willing to give up certain things in order to move up. Right. And that's another lesson there. But that's what I had to do. I had to minimize the distractions outside of my 9 to 5 so that I could really pursue, this new life that I knew I would eventually live.
And for other people too, would you say it's important to remember that there is a possibility if you're a person who wants to figure out how to do both. Maybe you do like your job, but it's still not your calling, but you want to find ways to do your calling in other spaces. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. I don't think there has to be an either or to any of this. Right. I think, everybody is different and you have to figure out what works for you. My encouragement to people listening is be obedient to the person that you are. Be that person. Don't, as much as you can, bring that person out, because you'll find that life is more gratifying when you can be who you're called to be.
What would you say in your experience then are ways that we might miss out on some opportunities? Do we have some blind spots that we need to be aware of when we're pursuing?
Yeah, I think we get comfortable a
Yeah.
lot of times when people when when you're able to bring in the money and pay your bills and you have the house that you want. I mean, people just get comfortable, and out of that comfort, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to do anything to disturb that. But you'll never grow being comfortable. It's through moments of pain and through moments of where you're just being stretched. That's really when growth occurs, in my opinion. So that's one way where people miss out on opportunities. The second way, I believe, is that people get distracted a lot. So when you're on social media a lot, when you're, going to, outings with friends, I mean, you've got to I go back to being intentional. When you're intentional about your time, when you're intentional about your goals, your dreams, and you're intentional about your vision, that intentionality will cut out a lot of clutter. It'll cut out a lot of the clutter that leads to distractions. And so it just makes you more focused. So I find that, the more distractions that you have, that can be a hindrance to owning those opportunities. And then if I had to give you one other way that people miss out is that they compare themselves. They compare themselves to other people. You give your power away when you look at other people and you compare yourselves to them and you try to be like them. You look at their success and you try to mimic their path to success. Well, or what they do well, you think that you can duplicate that. But that's a fast road to failure. When you try to imitate other people, that's guaranteed failure. So that I think that's where people miss out. They get comfortable, they get distracted, and then they compare themselves to other people.
One of the things I've seen that you said too, which I love, this idea of failing at fitting in. Mm-hmm. Why is it important, do you think, that we fail at fitting in?
We have to realize that we are uniquely made. We have our own thumbprint, like nobody else has our thumbprint, right? Mm-hmm. We are all different, and we all have different gifts. We all have different measures of gifts. I mean, and so we fail at fitting in is all about understanding that if you want to be a success, then be an original. Be who you are, and don't try to fit into a culture or a tradition just because other people did it this way. I have to do it this way. We get into this mode of thinking that we have to fit in, but I encourage people to stand out. Mm-hmm. And so that's that be who you are, be the person, own who you are, and stand out that way. That's what fail at fitting in is all about.
What would you say, Juliet, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
That I'm bolder and more courageous than I ever thought I could ever be. And I think about some of the conversations that I've had with friends and family members, the people who are closest to me, who say things like, oh, if I were you, I would have stayed there for 5 more years and I would have made that money, or I would have done this, I would have, mm-hmm. and people are well-intended, but unless they, but people will always judge you according to their own experiences. And I've learned that as a woman, I have to be independent of the expectations of others. And that includes my family. That includes my parents. My parents are of that generation where, you work somewhere for all your life.
Right.
And, and so stepping out and doing something new and different is, not something that they're used to.
They're like, you got that good job.
You got that good job.
Got that good job, good benefits.
benefits.
Exactly. Like, are you crazy?
That's right. You got those benefits. You're crazy. You know, I mean, and trust me, and as supportive as they, you know, try to be. I mean, and they are supportive. I think they see what I'm doing now, and they feel a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, you know, there was doubt. And I've just learned as an entrepreneur and as a woman, I have faith in God and I have faith in myself. And that's enough for me. I've learned to be content with God being my only audience. And I've learned that that I have to be very careful how much I share with other people, especially when they haven't walked down the path that I'm going. So the people that I bring around me, you know, certainly is a lesson for me that I have to be very intentional about the voices that I want around me who are giving me advice or people that I confide in or confide to about what I'm doing. I'm very intentional about that. But the lesson is, you know, be bold, be courageous, be willing to take the risk, be willing to fail greatly, you know, because high risk, high reward. That I think that just kind of goes along with being an entrepreneur. But yeah, so I would say that those are the lessons that I've learned.
I think it's so powerful what you said too, just about like your parents or friends or, you know, anyone else for people listening to think about. I've been through that too. At a point you sort of realize, you know what, I can't share this with them because, as you said, they're giving you well-intentioned feedback, but it's from their perspective, which everyone does. But when you're speaking to people from either a different generation or even a different experience, there are tons of people out there who want to work at one company for 30 years, even though, you know, our economy doesn't usually allow that anymore. But still, there are people who aspire to that. So those aren't the people you necessarily want to have a conversation with about, you know, quitting your job to start this business that no one really knows, you know, exactly what it is. Or like for me, it's an online business and other people, I don't understand. What does that mean? You're not going into an office, you know, so you have to, I think back to one of your earlier points, surround yourself with people who are going to be who are an authority in the space that you're trying to go into and who lift you up in a certain way, because there are going to be others who just don't get it.
That's right. That's right. And that doesn't mean that you drop them as friends altogether.
Right.
It just means
some of it's
that
family.
Yeah, especially when it's family. It just means that you have to pick and choose what you share with them and be wise, you know, be wise about it. And so that's what I've had to do. And eventually they'll come around, because when they see how successful you are, then they'll come around and they'll say, you know what, I knew you always had it. Right. I always believed in you. That's usually what happens. And then they start, you know, asking you for things. And so.
Well, what they say is God gives the vision to you, right? Nobody else. So people sometimes have to see it before they understand it.
That's right. That's right. And I always say this other thing too, because I think another thing that I've learned, it goes back to preparation. See, I was very confident in my preparation. Again, I didn't just make this quick decision that, you know what, I'm gonna stop doing this and just jump. You know, I firmly believe that part of the key to success is your preparation. And I was very intentional about that. I was intentional about the people that I brought in my preparation. I was intentional about saving, you know, a certain amount of money for my preparation. And that's why I'm in the space where I can build this brand, because building takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight. But with my family and my friends, you know, I'm sure they're saying, well, how's she able to, you know, she hadn't been with a corporation since since last September. So, you know,
how is she making this work?
How is she doing it? How is she able to, you know, do all this? Well, it's because I prepared. It's because I prepared for it. So I just had to emphasize that.
What would you say your support network looks like?
My support network is comprised of friends, women who are also entrepreneurs. who understand where, what I'm doing. And that's a big support group. I only have a couple of those, by the way, but in addition to that, I have my board of directors, or my team, I should say, which includes my literary agent, my marketing consultant, and a few other people who are specialized to help me build this brand. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I have my team, and then I have a couple of friends who are entrepreneurs, and most of them are women. Some are men as well, but I keep a very close group of people around me. I don't believe in quantity of friendships. I believe in quality of friendships, and so that's so it's just a few people.
So in closing, Juliet, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Okay. That's a great question. If I had to thank one, nobody's ever asked me that question before. I would probably, you know what? And wow. Okay. I've never said this before, but I would probably thank the person that gave me the most pain, that hurt me the most. And, geez, wow, that would probably be my former stepfather. Because he was a very painful figure. I certainly didn't like his presence, but it was during my adolescent years when I was under so much pain and control and emotional abuse that I became determined to channel all that life of pain into a life of promise. And it made me, while I was in my own emotional crisis, that crisis led to my creativity and made me think differently and helped me to shape a mindset for myself where I didn't marginalize myself, where I was determined to prove him and other people that I'm bigger and better than this, and that I can be successful, and I don't think I would not be this person of resilience if I was not met with such an antagonist that was in my former stepfather. So, yeah, thanks for asking that question.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Wow.
And I would tell him, I would probably say, this is what I would say to him: I forgive you. Yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Wow, is he still in your life now?
No.
Okay, good. So you forgive. That's
yes.
Great. Beautiful. So tell us, Juliet, how can we support you? Tell everyone, I'll have links to everything, of course, but tell everyone where to find you, your website, social media, and anything else you want us to know about that might be coming up for you.
Yeah, so I would love for people to go to my website, which is juliethall.com. I would love for people to connect with me socially on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Juliet Hall. You can also connect with me on Instagram, which is @Juliet.Hall. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on as Juliet Hall.
Very good.
Facebook.
Keep it
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah, I would love for people to follow me. So, not just follow, but engage with me. I'm very responsive to comments that I get on my on any of my social media um, uh, channels. So whether you have questions or criticism, I'm very responsive, and I receive both. And yeah, so I would like for people to, yeah, that's what I would like for people to do. Go to my website, and on my website, you'll learn more about Own Your Opportunities. You'll also learn about the events. My event calendar is on there, so you'll see where I'm speaking. And I'm very easy to connect with. There's also a contact page if you would like for me to speak to your groups or at your events. I would love to be considered for that as well, and you can certainly request me as a speaker. I also have a YouTube channel. You can connect with me there, and you can even see some of my speeches on my YouTube channel. So I've tried to make it very easy for people to find me and to follow me and to engage with me, and I would just love to be a part of your journey. And if you ever need inspiration or encouragement or motivation, and if you want to feel mobilized, just I am here. I am here, and I would love to be a voice in your life.
Fantastic. Juliet, thank you so much. And I just have to say, I truly appreciate how open you've been with sharing your story and your journey and just letting us experience everything with you, in addition to all of the fantastic advice and inspiration that you've given us. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Elayne.
Absolutely. So before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Parting piece of advice, be independent of the expectations of others.
Excellent. Juliet Hall, hold on just a minute. All right. Thank you so much for listening to that conversation with Juliet. Juliet, thank you so much for sharing in the way that you did, all of your advice, and truly sharing your story. We all appreciate it. For more, for those who are listening, please go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to the search icon at the top and just type Juliet, Juliet, and her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, all of the resources, and ways that you can get in touch with her, follow her on social media, let her know what you think about the episode, and continue to support her journey as she continues to grow her business. Also, you can do me a huge favor if it's your first time listening or you've been listening for a long time. If you haven't yet, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode. I want to make sure you get to hear all of the stories of these fabulous women, and we can make sure of that if you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, if you love the show, I would love to hear a review from you. I always say I love a 5-star review, but any feedback is appreciated. So again, wherever you're listening, please leave a review. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so thank you all so much for being here. You know I appreciate you. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.